When Joni Mitchell discovered her bungalow on Lookout Mountain in Laurel Canyon, she was enjoying the mild success of her album Song of Seagull in 1968. She said of first moving there, "I'll never forget the smell of Laurel Canyon when we first moved in. We moved all the way up Lookout Mountain. It was an amazing time." Her friend and manager Elliot Roberts wrote years later, "It was the time everyone was coming out to California. There was a camaraderie among all the artists, up and down the canyon, playing new songs for each other." Joni and Graham Nash met that March after a concert by the Hollies in Ottawa, Canada, when Mitchell introduced herself to Graham following the end of the show. That same evening, they meandered back to her hotel room, which Nash described as a seduction scene extraordinaire. That was spring, and by that July, Graham Nash had moved into her Laurel Canyon bungalow. He describes the neighborhood. "I can only liken it to Vienna at the turn of the century. Laurel Canyon was very similar in that there was freedom in the air. There was a sense that we could do anything. There was a sharing of ideas and a true love for being in the right place at the right time." He remembers a green VW parked in the driveway when he first arrived at Joni's home, hearing voices as he approached her doorway, then describing seeing her for the first time since Ottawa. "Her beauty was almost as big as her talent, and I'd been pulled into her orbit, captivated from the get-go." David Crosby and Stephen Stills were in the living room when Graham arrived. David says to Stephen, "Play Willie that song." They begin singing "You Don't Have to Cry," and then Graham says, "That's an incredible song, can you sing it again?" And then he asks them to sing it one more time. However, this time he joined in, adding his own harmony. He writes of the moment, "Whatever sound that Crosby, Stills, and Nash has was born in 30 seconds. That's how long it took for us to harmonize that way. So much so that we burst out laughing." Can you imagine, in a single day, Graham Nash walked into one of the most transformative relationships of his life and one of the most transformative groups in rock history? From that day on, Graham and Joni were inseparable. Their home became a hub of music with neighbors stopping by to hang out and play them songs. The artistic community of Laurel Canyon was the apex of creativity at that time, with neighbors including fellow CSN members, Mama Cass of the Mamas and the Papas, Frank Zappa, Jim Morrison of The Doors, members of the Byrds, Canned Heat, the band Love, Mickey Dolenz and Peter Tork of the Monkees, and John Mayall, and many others that would arrive later on. Joni and Graham's own music pursuits were at the heart of their days for the next year. Graham writes, "It was an intense time of who's going to get to the piano first, who's going to fill up the space with their music first." Joni would be out in the garden or doing something around the house while Graham worked on a song, and then once he got up to do something, she would move to the piano and begin working on her songs. He said, "Watching her was the most interesting process. It's almost like she channels. She was gone for hours. I mean, she was physically right there, but she wasn't there. I'd say things to her and she wasn't even listening. She was gone." The following year, in May 1969, Crosby, Stills, and Nash's debut album was released, and by August, they were set to play Woodstock. Joni was invited as well. However, when Joni and David Geffen arrived at LaGuardia Airport, he picked up the New York Times and read the article which said 400,000 people sitting in mud. He turned to Joni and said, "Let's not go." She was set to be on the Dick Cavett show the following day. David was worried that they might get stuck and miss the show. Joni felt conflicted but heeded the warning from Geffen and decided to skip the show. She went to the hotel in New York and watched Woodstock on television. That only made her feel worse, as she recalled. "The deprivation of not being able to go provided me with an intense angle on Woodstock. For some reason, it impressed me as being a modern miracle. For a herd of people that large to cooperate so well, it was pretty remarkable. And there was a tremendous optimism. So I wrote the song Woodstock out of those feelings, and the first 3 times I performed it in public, I burst into tears because it brought back the intensity of the experience and was so moving." Joni later remembered how she felt about Graham and CSNY making the show. The boys weren't going to miss out on it, and they rented a helicopter. They got in and they got out, and they crashed the TV show the next day. The following day, Joni and Graham Nash, along with the fellow CSN members, were all on the Dick Cavett show as the band recounted their stories of Woodstock, which Joni later said was salt in the wound. 'Cause to be young then and to have missed that, even though it was that close, that was everything to me. But I guess it was meant for a reason, and because I couldn't go, Woodstock dominated my mind. I watched everything on TV, just sat in front of the TV and wrote most of the song in the first few days of the festival, and it was done by Sunday night. So by Joni missing the show, she wrote the song that not only encapsulated the Woodstock Festival, but also the entire 60s counterculture movement, which was based on an optimistic utopia of peace and love, despite the turbulent times that ensued. The song is a spiritual journey of a concert goer who encounters a fellow traveler, referred to as a child of God, walking along the road to Yasgar's farm, which she likens to the Garden of Eden. Joni brings the energy of the festival back to life with the lines, "By the time we got to Woodstock, we were 500,000 strong, and everywhere was a song and a celebration." Then finally painting a hippie utopia, she references the anti-war sentiment with the line, "Bombers riding shotgun in the sky, turning into butterflies above our nation." And with a poet's touch,
"We are stardust, we are golden, we are pure, and we got to get ourselves back to the guy."
if those lines don't perfectly encapsulate the 60s optimism and their desire towards a more utopian society, I don't know what does. In Reckless Daughter, Joni spoke of the value of writing the song as opposed to being at the festival. Woodstock wouldn't have been written if I had been there, because those events are full of the back room, full of sibling rivalries. Everyone's desperate to win. It's not a sports event, but there is that element of it. I wouldn't have been able to write that song if I'd been there, because I would have been caught up in that backstage neurosis. David Crosby said she captured the feeling and importance of the Woodstock Festival better than anyone who had actually been there. She then gave the song to Graham for Crosby, Stills, Nash & Young to record. Graham said, "By the time we got back to the hotel, having gone through that tremendous experience, the song Woodstock had already been written." When CSNY turned it into an anthem, their three-part harmony juxtaposing Neil Young's distorted guitar captured the idealism of Woodstock in an upbeat rock song. The changes made by CSNY that changed parts of the song and the other musician who contributed before the song was finished will be on the extended music version. Joni released her version on Ladies of the Canyon in April 1970, and it served as the B-side of the single Big Yellow Taxi, while Crosby, Stills, Nash & Young's rock version was released as a single the previous month in March 1970. Woodstock is included on their album Deja Vu, also released that month. Their version would go on to become a classic rock staple. Woodstock was the apex of the peace and love movement, but in some ways its anthem was also the movement's swan song, as just a week before the violence of the Manson murders took place on the West Coast, and then just a few months later, the horrors of Altamont. The return to the Garden of Eden was not to be, and soon neither was Joni and Graham's relationship, which ended in 1970. Joni wrote to him in a telegram, "If you hold sand too tightly in your hand, it will run through your fingers." Yet their relationship did produce a lot of great songs, either through the inspiration of love and their artistic community of Laurel Canyon, but also sometimes through competition. Graham later wrote of the tug of war within the relationship. It was an interesting clash of, "I want to get as close to you as possible," and "leave me alone to create." Joni, on the other hand, said, "Graham and I have been the source of many songs for one another. A lot of beautiful music came from it, and a lot of beautiful times came from it." After Graham and Joni broke up, she stayed in the house they shared for several years. And later, when she finally did move out, She didn't sell the house right away. She rented it to her road manager, Ron Stone. I guess she wasn't quite ready to let go of those once-in-a-lifetime kind of memories. And who could blame her? Laurel Canyon of 1969 is sacred territory. I'm sure many people, if given the opportunity to go back in time, would head straight to Laurel Canyon and rent a place just to be part of this special place in time. Of course, no one would probably believe it if you tried to explain that the utopia they were searching for was right there and it wouldn't last for long. I checked, and while Joni's former home in Laurel Canyon is not listed on the National Register of Historic Places, Yasgar's farm in Bethel, New York is as of 2017. Well, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you'd like to read more about Joni Mitchell, I'll link the book in the description along with the music discussed. Please consider joining for exclusive content on Patreon or the ad-free version on YouTube. Thanks for watching. See you next video.